Imagine living in a place where everything was allowed, where money could buy any pleasure, where parties lasted for days, and no one cared about tomorrow. Sodom and Gomorrah were the paradise of lust, wealth, and corruption. But behind the luxurious mansions and grand temples, there was a world of violence, betrayal, and limitless perversion. Women were treated as objects, children were sacrificed in dark rituals, and the poor were left to die in the streets. Until one day, everything ended in flames. What really happened in these cities? What was it like to live in a place where morality simply did not exist? Discover now the dark truth about Sodom and Gomorrah. Wealth and luxury. The prosperity that led to arrogance. Imagine walking through a city full of vibrant markets, where merchants traded gold, silver, and rare spices. The smell of roasted meat and freshly baked bread filled the air. Men dressed in luxurious tunics bargained, while servants carried jars of oil and exotic wines. This was Sodom, a prosperous commercial center where wealth flowed without limits. But this prosperity brought consequences that few saw coming. Sodom and Gomorrah were located in an extremely fertile region, near the Dead Sea. The fields around the cities were abundant, providing wheat, barley, and succulent fruits. This rich soil allowed the inhabitants to accumulate wealth quickly. Trade flourished with caravans coming from Egypt, Mesopotamia, and distant lands. The streets were crowded with artisans, jewelers, and merchants displaying their finest goods. The richest lived in luxurious houses built with polished stones and decorated with fine imported fabrics. In the city center, imposing palaces reflected the power of the most influential. Parties were frequent, gathering nobles and wealthy traders who flaunted their fortunes at extravagant banquets. Wine was never lacking, and food was served in excessive amounts. But behind this glittering wealth, inequality was evident. A city without compassion or justice. While the rich feasted, the poor were ignored. Asking for help was useless. The culture of Sodom did not value compassion. Kindness was seen as a weakness. Trade was also marked by greed. Merchants used false weights to deceive buyers. They charged absurd prices, and the powerful exploited workers mercilessly. If someone fell into debt, they could easily be sold into slavery to pay what they owed. Justice favored the wealthy, while the poor had no one to defend them. Sodom looked like a spectacle of prosperity, but in reality, it was a place where arrogance and exploitation reigned. For those with money, Sodom was a paradise. For those without it, it was hell on earth. A city that believed it was untouchable. Sodom's wealth brought something even worse: a society convinced that it would never face consequences. The people believed they could live without limits, thinking they would never be punished for their excesses. However, their fate was already sealed. Their destruction would come in an unexpected and devastating way. What comes next may be exactly what you need to know about the true nature of Sodom and Gomorrah. If you believe greed and selfishness still corrupt our society, declare your faith in the comments right now. My trust is in God, not in riches, architecture and organization, beauty on the outside, rot on the inside. If you arrived in Sodom for the first time, you would be impressed. From a distance, the city seemed like an advanced civilization for its time. The walls were high, the towers rose over the hills, and the streets were bustling with life. Merchants shouted their offers, while priests performed rituals in grand temples dedicated to pagan gods. But a closer look would reveal a society rotting from within. A lawless city without mercy. The side streets and dark alleys were dangerous. There were no laws to protect the weak. If someone was robbed or attacked, justice was rare. Judges and rulers were corrupt, favoring only those who could pay bribes. The poorer neighborhoods were located far from the city center. The narrow streets were filthy, filled with makeshift shacks. People lived in misery, while the wealthy feasted without concern. But the worst part was the complete lack of compassion. In Sodom, helping the weak was seen as a waste of time. Wild parties and pagan rituals at nightfall, the city transformed. The same plazas used for trade became sites of wild celebrations and dark rituals. Musicians played flutes and drums, while crowds danced provocatively. Religious ceremonies included sacrifices and immoral acts. Pleasure without limits was the only law. Pagan temples were at the center of this culture of excess. Priests organized rituals in honor of fertility gods, where depraved ceremonies were performed. But in reality, these acts only pushed the city deeper into its own corruption. The last day of Sodom. When sin brought destruction, the day began like any other. The markets were busy, and the temples were full. But no one knew it would be their last sunrise. The night before, two mysterious strangers had arrived in the city. A group of violent men decided to attack them. But these men were not simple travelers. They were angels sent with a mission to destroy the city. The inhabitants surrounded the house where the angels were staying, demanding that they be handed over for abuse. Then, something unexpected happened. A blinding light struck the attackers, leaving them stunned and powerless. It was a sign. Sodom's time was over. Fire and brimstone rained down at dawn. The angels spoke to Lot, one of the few righteous men left in the city. Leave this place. Take your family and do not look back. This city will be destroyed. As Lot and his family ran, the sky darkened. Thick clouds covered the city, and the wind changed. Suddenly, the first bolt of fire fell from the heavens. A storm of fire and brimstone began to consume everything. Temples and palaces collapsed in flames. The rich and poor alike ran in terror, but there was no escape. Amid the chaos, Lot's wife made a fatal mistake. She looked back. In an instant, she turned into a pillar of salt. The end of Sodom and Gomorrah. When the firestorm ended, nothing remained. What was once a thriving metropolis was now just ashes and smoke. The city that thought it was invincible had been destroyed in a single day. Pride, corruption, and lack of compassion led to its end. This story serves as a powerful reminder. No civilization, no matter how rich or powerful, can survive if it chooses to defy all principles of justice and goodness. If this story has impacted you, share this message and comment. God is my refuge.